Hello, I'm Simon Du Plessis from CloudClevr, and today I'm going to take you through some of the features in Clevr360 that I find useful, with a particular focus on security. This session will be relevant for both IT managers and business owners. So I've logged into a demo environment on Clevr360. I'm going to focus mainly on the security aspects, but I'll also just quickly highlight a few other key points. Firstly, when you log into the platform, any immediate alerts or any high risk alerts will be available to you here in the notification section. Once you've cleared this, you can still access those alerts by clicking on the little bell here in the top right hand corner. On the dashboard, you can pin reports, anything you find particularly interesting. These are just the default reports that come in as standard. To look into the insights in a bit more detail, we'll go to Insights and Analytics. Utilization. In this instance, it will focus mainly on Microsoft 365 licensing, Central, Zoom, or any of the third-party cloud apps you have integrated. I like looking at license activity and redundant licenses. With the release of Copilot, which is a very expensive license by Microsoft, a large number of our client users have been asking for Copilot licenses. They're expensive, and it's interesting to see who's actually using the license you've had to invest in. So if I click on this report and just look at last used, I can see, for example, there's a couple of licenses. This user hasn't used this license for 60 days. So I always look out, is there any perhaps a Copilot license or a Teams premium license for a user that hasn't logged in a while, and then perhaps move that license to another user rather than spending on additional. Redundant licenses, again, if a user has perhaps left the organization, the account's been disabled for a period of time, they might still have a license allocated to them. Those licenses, again, can be unallocated, reallocated to another user, again, saving you a bit of cost, particularly with the Microsoft licensing, where it's on an annual committed basis. So you might not be able to cancel those licenses for a period of time. So you might as well make use of them. Then adoption, this gives you an overview of, how well are your users using the products you've got in place. This looks across teams and meeting rooms. I find the meeting rooms quite interesting. It's usually the meeting room that's the closest to the coffee machine that gets the most use. Or if there's a meeting room where maybe a camera is unplugged, or it's not got the same facilities as other rooms, you can see that the adoption of that would be quite low. And also it'll highlight here if a room's been inactive, it hasn't had any bookings for a while. If you're in a large building providing maybe meeting rooms to third parties, this is quite interesting to look at. Under productivity, email sent is interesting. You'll see you have an average number of emails that go out in a day. I've done a demo with a client recently where one day there was a spike. There was about 3 or 4 times as much as they would normally do send in a day. And it was because that they weren't aware of this at the time, but a user's account was compromised, and a malicious party was using that account to send out phishing emails to all of that user's contacts. As soon as that was picked up, it could be blocked, but it was quite good. It opened up a conversation with that client to then perhaps look at XDR technologies, which allows us to actually monitor the client's 365 usage and what is happening in their tenant on a real-time basis. And for example, if there is a successful login from a suspicious country, or a user is logging in from multiple locations at the same time, that can be highlighted and it can be automatically remediated. I'm going to spend the rest of the time really delving into the security side of Clevr360, because I think this is where I get the most value. So suspicious activity. This will pull any interesting or suspicious activity on your Microsoft 365 tenant. Again, you can log into the 365 portal, you can log into all your different vendor cloud portals, and you can see all of this information. But something that will take you 200 clicks, we're doing in 20 clicks. And that is the whole purpose with Clevr360, just to simplify your management and give you one dashboard with a single pane of glass, gives you access to everything. So suspicious activity. This will highlight anything where users logged in from a country they've not logged in before. There's been suspicious travel. There might be 2 logins from different locations at the same time. Or you can see, for example, these ones, suspicious MFA failure, where there has been changes made to the token when the users try to log in. And you can see these are all from different countries. Now, the IP address, you'll see it mentions here data center. This would suggest to me that the user is using a plugin or a third-party app to access their 365 account. Now, that is something that Microsoft will enable by default. Users are able to install plugins, things like LinkedIn, for example, you can integrate with your Microsoft 365 account. There's a number of others which we can have a look at through here. Now, you can set up a policy so that your IT team have to approve these applications before they can be implemented. So we're not stopping users from being able to do anything, but we just ask them to go to the IT team, go to your IT provider, and get them to vet the application first before it gets approved. In this demo environment, for example, do we really want a Betfred plugin to have access to your Microsoft 365 tenant? And another risk we see as well is a lot of users will use the same password across multiple vendors. So they might be using a password for LinkedIn that's the same as their Microsoft 365 password, and similarly with something like like Betfred. So if that vendor is compromised and the password becomes available, first thing the attacker will do is they will try to utilize that password to then access your Microsoft 365 account. And hopefully you have other layers of defense against that. But again, good password hygiene, and then making sure you have control over which applications can integrate with your 365 tenant. Next one, external Teams access. There's none here, but this will give you an overview of any files your users have shared externally to your organization. So that can be anything that's located in SharePoint, in OneDrive, on Teams. Perhaps they've been talking to a vendor or to a candidate in an interview, and they want to share some information. The risk here is the user can be sharing a folder by accident or on purpose, but not realizing that the user they shared that with will have access to all the data that's in that folder. Those links don't expire by default. So a month from now, a year from now, they might be using that folder for something else, maybe putting some costing sheets in there that they don't want to share with the external party, but they wouldn't be aware that they've shared that externally previously. So we say, you can set those links to expire. That's a policy you can set on your 365 tenant, and that's a really good idea. Set it to 60 days, 90 days, and that will allow those links to be self-policed. Over time, they'll clean themselves up, and you don't need to worry about users perhaps making an accident, causing an accident. Failed logins. A failed login is a good thing. It means they haven't been able to breach your infrastructure, but it will allow you to highlight which of your accounts are being targeted. If I sort it by the highest fail login number first, we can see Derek's account's had 1,200 failed logins in the last 30 days. Now, that means that account is being targeted. Now, if Derek is still with the organization, I would say we need to ensure his security is up to speed. He's got all the security measures we've got in place and it's up to date. If he's no longer with the organization, why is his account still enabled? If it's enabled, the attack surface is being increased. We should really be disabling that account. If users still need access to the email or perhaps to some of the data in his folders, there are ways around that. It can be changed into a shared mailbox, for example, and login can be disallowed to that account, which will still allow your internal users access to the email in that account. MFA status, again, this is a nice, easy one just to check. Do all your users have multi-factor authentication in place? There's a standard policy now to enable that for all users in Microsoft 365, but you can override that policy and disable it, which is a very bad idea. An easy way to do that is just click on the filter, and I just look at administrative users. Great, all my admin users have got MFA enabled, which is the most basic of security that you should have in place. Right, the next bit is your secure score. So I take this with a pinch of salt because I've never seen a score of 100%. I've seen a couple of scores above 85%, but it's very rare. To be able to achieve that, you have to almost have every product that Microsoft have available on the marketplace implemented and configured. So that can be very costly. There are always a few good recommendations in here. If you sort by score impact, and we just look at the highest rated scores first. For example, this might be important for some organizations, other organizations that might not be a risk for, but users are by default allowed to share their calendars externally to the organization. Again, that can be something that the user accidentally does, or it might be something you don't want because there might be some sensitive information in calendars. Another example is ensuring additional storage providers are restricted. By default, you're able to share company data with Box or Dropbox, and your users can do that without an admin approving it or helping them configure that, which means there won't be any security controls around it. That's a really good feature to disable. I try to look at this for most of my clients on at least a monthly basis to make sure we address the highest priority issues if they've not already addressed. Microsoft updates this on almost a daily basis with new threats as they become available or new technologies that they release. Another one we see a lot, which isn't in this environment, is legacy authentication being enabled. And that could be because you might have an old scanner or an old printer in the office that you need to be able to send emails to your user from. What legacy authentication does, it means it bypasses multi-factor authentication, which then gets rid of a lot of the security layers you've implemented. So that is a very good policy to disable as quickly as possible. The last few things to look at, mailboxes with auto forwarding rules. Now, the first thing an attacker will do once they've successfully breached an account is they will set up an email forwarding rule to send copies of all of your inbound and outbound emails to an external email address. Now, you can set up a policy on your tenant to block that from happening. As you can see here, Scott's emails are being forwarded to Scotty at Outlook. Kate's emails are going, oh, this looks a bit suspicious. So 2 risks here. This could be an account that's breached and being forwarded to a third-party account. They can then look at that, for example, if she's in an accounts department. That could be invoices going out. Those invoices can be tampered with, sent to your customers, or even to your suppliers. So that's a very good rule to disable. Secondly, Scotty might be someone who's left the organization, but he's set up a forwarder to his personal email address to make sure that he still gets the communications that he might have been included in. And that might be because he's included in a sales email address group or so on. So it is very good to keep an eye on these. Then shared mailboxes with sign-ins enabled. You could have, for example, a sales at email address, an accounts at email address. These accounts do not require sign-in to be enabled. They can be shared with your internal users, but no one ever needs to directly log into that mailbox. So it's really good practice to just disable, log into those by default. This is a little handy report. It will show you any mailboxes that are shared with delegates. So, for example, Alison could have access to Chester's mailbox. There's also a nice little button here where you can just download this data if you want to review it in a spreadsheet. It's hard to see this directly on the 365 dashboard. You can do some PowerShell script, but just having this all on one screen, one click, saves so much time. And then the last thing, on the compliance side, if you are looking at Cyber Essentials accreditation, for example, we need to ensure that we're in control of all of our mobile devices and our endpoints, make sure they're up to date before allowing access to our systems. And a good way to see here is, how many outdated devices have currently got access to my email and my data. And it will just outline the devices and the versions of operating systems they're running for you. If you need help with any of this, please do reach out to us. We can definitely advise on your IT strategy. We can talk you through the findings from the Clevr360 tool, or if there is perhaps a specific project or security risk you want us to address, please reach out to us. There will be a link in the article to the Clevr360 portal and how to get the tool set up. It's very easy. The instructions are all provided for you. Thank you very much.